As the 19th century drew to a close, the Australian continent was slowly shaking off the dust of a severe economic depression. By 1899, confidence was returning to the colonies. Industries were rebuilding, and the railway networks were expanding, breathing new life into rural communities. One such community was Broadford, a modest township situated on Sunday Creek, approximately 70 kilometers north of Melbourne. It was a hub for sawmills, farms, and a paper mill, a place where everyone knew their neighbors. Among the residents was a bright, cheerful 8-year-old girl named Olivia Rita Jones, known affectionately to all simply as Rita. Living with her grandparents, Alfred and Elizabeth Temple, to attend the local school while her parents worked in New South Wales, Rita was a familiar face in the town. However, the peace of the post-Christmas lull was about to be shattered. On the morning of Tuesday, December 26th, Boxing Day, Rita was sent on a simple errand to buy fruit. It was a walk she had made many times, but this time she would not return. The timeline of Rita's disappearance was reconstructed with painful precision. She left her home at 11:30 a.m., purchased the fruit, and began her walk back. She was last seen near the Creek Bridge, walking with a friend, Sarah Brace, before they parted ways. By 2 p.m., panic had set in. Her grandparents, realizing she was hours overdue, raised the alarm. The town of Broadford mobilized instantly. Neighbors searched sheds and abandoned properties, while fears grew that the child might have fallen into Sunday Creek. Volunteers and police dragged the creek waters late into the night and resumed at dawn, but the dark waters yielded no secrets. As the search for the child intensified, another absence was noted. William Jones, a drifting laborer recently employed by the local butcher, Mr. Doty, had also vanished. He had only been in town for 2 weeks, and his sudden disappearance alongside Rita's cast a sinister shadow over the investigation. Suspicion turned toward the butcher shop where William Jones worked and lodged. On Thursday, December 28th, a team of constables, James, Wright, and Corey, descended upon the premises. The property, formerly a hotel, was a labyrinth of 30 mostly empty rooms. The officers swept through the building but found nothing. Undeterred, they moved to the outbuildings in the yard. It was in an old, dilapidated chicken shed that the horror was finally unveiled. Constable Wright noticed a pile of hay that seemed unusually high in one corner. Pushing through the wire netting and moving the fodder aside, he discovered a sack. Inside lay the charred, unrecognizable remains of little Rita Jones. The evidence at the scene told a grim story. It appeared the child had been murdered in the yard and her body placed into a boiling down copper, a large industrial vat used for rendering animal fat, in a desperate attempt to incinerate the evidence. When that failed, the killer had hidden the remains in the shed. The brutality of the crime sent shock waves through the colony. The bag of fruit Rita had bought was found nearby, a heartbreaking reminder of her innocence. Inside the butcher shop, police found a note left by William Jones, "Gone on the drink." It was a flimsy alibi for a man on the run. A manhunt was launched immediately, with police and civilians scouring the countryside on horseback. The public mood was volatile. Lynching was a very real threat should the townsfolk find him before the law did. Detectives Whitney and Woods took over the crime scene, discovering a missing butcher's cleaver, believed to be the murder weapon. Another employee, Albert Wilson, admitted to finding a knife in Jones's room and cleaning it, unaware of the crime, a critical error that may have washed away vital forensic evidence. Meanwhile, rumors swirled about Jones's whereabouts, with false sightings whipping the grieving community into a frenzy. The fugitive was finally apprehended on January 3, 1900, in the town of Compton, 40 miles away. William Jones denied everything. He claimed he had read of the suspicion against him in the papers and was actually on his way to surrender to police to clear his name when he was arrested. He was transported back to Broadford under heavy guard to face a coroner's inquest that would grip the nation. The inquest was a marathon of testimony involving 33 witnesses. The medical examiner, Dr. Morton, confirmed death by suffocation and strangulation, noting the body was too badly burned to determine if the cleaver had been used. Witnesses placed Jones at the scene. A neighbor, Mrs. Clark, swore she saw a man matching Jones's description lighting a fire behind the butcher shop. Another witness, young Sarah Brace, recalled seeing a man in a blue coat leaving the shop around the time Rita disappeared. The trial moved to the criminal sessions in Melbourne in February 1900. The prosecution built a case on circumstantial evidence: Jones's presence at the shop, the missing cleaver, the fire in the copper vat, and his sudden flight from town. They argued his departure was an admission of guilt. The defense, led by Mr. O'Loughlin, fought back vigorously. They argued that Jones's behavior, leaving town to find work and drink, was consistent with his history as an itinerant laborer, not a fleeing murderer. They attacked the reliability of the eyewitnesses, particularly the identification process, which they deemed suggestive and unfair. A key defense witness, Mrs. Ellen Allen, testified she saw a man at the butcher's window who was definitely not William Jones. The defense painted a picture of a rush to judgment by a community blinding by grief and rage. In a highly unusual move, the jury requested to visit the scene of the crime in Broadford. They traveled by train, inspecting the butcher shop and the yard. To test the credibility of Mrs. Clark's testimony, 2 jurors enacted a reconstruction. One donned a coat and stood by the boiling down shed, while the others watched from Mrs. Clark's vantage point. They concluded that identification was indeed possible. This field trip likely sealed Jones's fate. Upon returning to Melbourne, the jury deliberated and returned a verdict of guilty. William Robert Jones, standing before the court, maintained his composure and his innocence, stating simply, "I am innocent. That's all I've got to say." He was sentenced to death. Despite an appeal, the sentence was upheld. On March 26, 1900, Jones faced the gallows. His final words were of forgiveness for his accusers, maintaining to the very end that he had not killed Rita Jones. Whether a cold-blooded killer or a victim of circumstance, the mystery of exactly what happened in that butcher's yard was buried with him.